notion of occasional cause. It would be a new practice of philosophy rather than one more new reforming theory of philosophy. Hence, it is better to ask what non-philosophy does rather than what it is. Its being is its actuality, that is, its performativity. The method the practice follows has various names, and I won't go into the jargon here. One term that comes up again and again is the term cloning. But I'll leave that aside. Well, I'll get to it in a moment. Now, through giving up the desire to represent the real, according to Laruelle, the real acts on philosophy, though in a special form of occasional causation. By this notion of cloning, by cloning philosophical statements, but shorn of their transcendent ambition, a work of transformation occurs. In other words, philosophy's transcendent desire is replaced with a real identification, only one that is hypothetical, so to speak, an as-if identification that performs rather than represents the real. In cloning, non-philosophy experiments with philosophy. It tests the hypothesis, what follows from thinking of a philosophy as belonging to the real rather than being about the real, through varying the significance of the terms from representing reality to being according to the real. Whenever, in other words, there is a circularity of presupposition and conclusion in the original representational philosophy, this identification installs a performative or hypothetical union of philosophy and the real. Okay, so that's enough of Laruelle. So what might Derrida say in return? They kind of fell out and didn't speak to each other after that. And Laruelle was quite, heartbroken in some respects that Derrida didn't sense that Laruelle, there was some substance in what he was doing, rather than just this is crazy. We might ask then, is there a way for Derrida to respond to Laruelle's non-philosophy? Is there not something perhaps even deconstructible in his insistence, that Laruelle's insistence of performative rigor and consistency? Or aren't these all two philosophical values after all? Derrida, we should note, is a self-confessed literalist. He reliteralizes language, words becoming things again, by exposing their metaphorical roots in spatiality, in spacing, espacement, graphemes, materiality of meaning, theory, and philosophy. Now that said, the law of identity in classical Aristotelian logic, for example, the law of A equals A, rests on a consistency. But that kind of consistency is also material. There's a sort of spacing going on there. Bivalent logic is moulded, arguably, as various philosophers have said, on solid matter, on a very specific kind of consistency. Physical atomism and logical atomism mirror and co-engender each other, and likewise the consistencies that they measure. This is not to conflate all logical possibility with one physical possibility, however, but simply to show that each exists amongst a range of types, most of which remain to be invented or engendered. There are many consistencies to the moving material world we are a part of, not just the one logic of solids, but also other possible logics of fluids or gases, where A is simultaneously A and B and C. And obviously, I'm thinking of the work there of Deleuze, but you could also look at Irigaray, you could look at Whitehead, Bergson, and so on. Consistency then has different meanings, one of which concerns the way in which a substance, like a liquid, holds itself together, or stands together, is I think the etymology. Its thickness or viscosity. But not all logics have the hardness that a rigorous, consistent argument is said to require, as Laruelle is trying to produce, a thought that tries to approximate a solid object. This is not to privilege, by contrast, imagination, say, over something styled as consistency, singular per se, which might then be called the hobgoblin of the small-minded, but rather to show that there might be different theories of rigor and consistency, ones that some would even find it hard to call a theory at all, looking more like actions as they do. So performance then, performing different kinds of consistency, can break the circle or aporia of sufficient reason when we enact a new kind of thought of logic and of consistency. After all, there are many candidates for what counts as thought, leaving aside just logic, thinking descriptively, poetically, mathematically, affectively, in duration, as Bergson puts it, embodiedly, analogically, syllogistically, puzzily, or paraconsistently. And likewise, we can have thinking through a method of questions, of problems, of dialogue, of dialectic, of genealogy, of historicism, and of course, of deconstruction. By enacting new philosophies, as Derrida, Bergson, Deleuze, and yes, Laruelle, I believe, all do, these thinkers perform their consistencies plural in the only consistent manner possible. You have to press the green button.
I just want to ask a question to Drucilla about the return of the specters.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
About the return of the specters. I think you were speaking for the return. In the Oresteia, as you know, the problem precisely is that the specters keep returning. That Agamemnon is speaking through Orestes, which makes it a really uncanny play to listen to. But it ends, that cycle ends, of course, with Athena putting an end to that, in order to put a stop to this kind of spectral return, so that you don't wind up in a world where you have constant revenge, where the specters come back asking for blood and they get revenge, and there's the cyclical thing, and there's a sense there about justice at the end of that play, of Athenian justice, that we're not going to be participating in blood revenge. And Thucydides seems to have a lot to say about that too in various parts of the Peloponnesian War, that there's some societies that just have this ancestral issue going, and that they melt down because they can't control it. It's like a plague that takes over. I was sort of wondering how you would respond to that in terms of the comment, and thinking that we shouldn't put those specters away, that we should somehow or another entertain the specter.
Interesting enough, it takes me to what I must say I found deeply moving, a paper by you, which is that the way the revenge and the demand for revenge by the specter, and the demand for us to pay our debt, to be able to listen to the dead, and to be able to address the dead, and are intimately connected in the way that I'm suggesting that Derrida, particularly in Spectres of the Marx, evokes the spectre, because, of course, the ghost in Hamlet is read precisely, as you put it, as the one who is demanding revenge. And throughout Spectres of Marx, what haunts the book are the dead demanding from us revenge. All those who have died fighting for revolution, all those now who are suffering terribly, being derealized, deposed of their humanity. 1 million people live in London who have no rights, no visibility, no existence, no ability to go to school, no ability to have a home. Are those derealized bodies demanding revenge from us? Or are they demanding that we pay that debt in some other way? And I think what made Spectres of Marx such a powerful book about the performative of the spectre is that there is no ultimate answer. Of course, Derrida wasn't into giving answer to that fine line between revenge and address. But coming back to the demand that we pay our debt, even when we can't really know what that debt demands, particularly in terms of some form of fidelity to those who have died and gone before us, that if we do not pay that debt, then revenge is inevitable. And so the spectre of Marx, which comes in 3 different specters, 3 different Marxism,